My name is Cassian Vale. I have been alive for a very long time, long enough to have been there. I keep the things people handed me and never came back for. Tonight, I'll show you one. They died because the mountain stopped, and they believed it. I watched them believe it. This is a clay lamp, oil burner. It fits in one palm, and the spout is worn smooth on one side, because a girl named Secunda used to carry it from room to room with her thumb resting just there. She was 9. She gave it to me to hold the morning the mountain woke, because her hands were full, and she said she would take it back at supper. There was no supper. Her town was Pompeii, under the mountain called Vesuvius, in the year you would number 79. The mountain gave her 18 hours. Almost everyone she knew died in the last of them, not because they ran too late. What killed them was a lie, not the fire, the lie. I have stood in a great many places where the world ended, and I have learned that the killer is rarely the disaster. The killer is the lull, the hour when the shaking eases and the dust settles and some calm, reasonable voice inside you says, "There, it's over. We're past the worst." The people of Pompeii were not fools. They were us. They were people who had survived the morning and could not imagine that surviving the morning was the trap. I watched a whole town talk itself into staying. Before this candle burns down, you will know what that cost them, and you will know what the plaster casts really are, not relics, witnesses. They did not know it was a volcano. The idea of it, a mountain that is a furnace with a lid, they did not have the way we do. Vesuvius to them was good ground. Vineyards climbed its slopes, and the wine off those slopes was famous. Secunda's father, a freedman named Restitutus, pressed grapes from the lower terraces, and he liked to say the mountain fed them. He said it like a blessing. A great earthquake had wrecked the town some 17 years before. Parts of it were still being rebuilt when I arrived, so Pompeii was used to the ground complaining. When it trembled in those last days, they shrugged. But the wells went strange. A neighbor's cistern dropped and turned brackish overnight. Springs faltered. A man told me his dogs would not stop circling. Nobody read it as a sentence. They had no book in which these were the early lines. I did. I had seen ground behave this way before, far to the east, and I had learned what it announced. But I was a stranger lodging above a bakery, and there is a particular helplessness in being the only one in the room who can read the language. You cannot simply say, "The mountain is going to open." They look at you, kindly, the way you look at a man who has had too much sun. So I said the small true things I could. I told Restitutus I did not like the wells. I told him I would be traveling soon and that he might think of doing the same. He laughed and poured me wine off his own slope. The only journey a vintner makes at harvest, he said, is from the press to the cellar. The ground always settled by harvest. He was wrong about the harvest. It came around midday. One deep cough from the mountain, felt in the chest before the ears, and then the column. A boy across the bay watched it climb. Years later, grown, he set down what he had seen in a letter to the historian Tacitus, in his own hand, at the historian's asking. And that letter is nearly all the first-hand testimony history kept of that day.
I cannot give you a more exact description of its figure than by resembling it to that of a pine tree, for it shot up to a great height in the form of a very tall trunk, which spread itself out at the top into a sort of branches.
A pine tree of smoke. It was the truest thing anyone said, and history kept the tree because a boy could not stop seeing it. It climbed for miles, pale and then darker, blotting out the sun, a town at a time. It did not look like fire. It looked like the sky growing a tree. Secunda found me at the bakery wall. She was not crying, Children that age are curious until the adults teach them otherwise. She had her arms full of her little brother's things and her mother's good shears and a folded cloth and the lamp. The lamp was in her hand, and she could not carry it and the rest. So she pressed it at me. "Hold this," she said. "I'll get it at supper." And she went to help her mother. The sky to the north was no longer a color a sky should be. I held the lamp. By afternoon, ash and small stones were falling on the town, pumice light as bread, not crushing, a grey snow of it gathering on the roofs, and then, for stretches, it would ease, the fall would thin, the roar would drop to a mutter. That easing is the hour that did the killing. In those pauses, I watched it happen, door by door. People came back out. They looked up at a quieter sky and made the most human calculation there is. The road out was choking. The harbour was chaos. Inside were the grain, the shrine, the money, the bed, everything a life is made of. And the mountains seemed to be tiring. So they stayed. They shuttered their windows against the ash and set themselves to wait it out, the way you wait out a storm. Restitutus barred his door with his family inside, dry, fed, away from the falling stone. By every instinct a careful man owns, he had done the right thing. He told me through the shutter to come in off the road. The pumice was piling against the walls. It was, he believed, almost over. It was not almost over. It had not even truly begun. I did not go in. I told him I would wait under the colonnade. The truth is that I could not bear to stand inside a door I knew was a tomb. So I stood in the forum through the night with a child's lamp in my hand, and I listened to a town deciding roof by roof to trust the lull. The mountain gave them near 18 hours of warning. It spent most of them whispering that the worst was over. The pumice fell all night. Where it heaped on the flat roofs, some gave way, and that took people who had done everything right in the dark under their own ceilings. That was the first betrayal of the lull. Staying in was never the safe bet they had been promised. It was not the last. The last came near dawn. The great column, which had held itself up for hours on the force beneath it, failed and fell back on itself. What came down the mountain was not lava, slow and avoidable. The learned now call it a pyroclastic surge, the collapsed column flooding downhill as a low, fast cloud of burning air and ash, hugging the ground faster than anything on legs, carrying a heat I will not describe because dignity asks that I do not. I will tell you only what it cost, not how. It reached the town in minutes. It found them where the lull had told them to stay. It was, in the end, very quiet. People imagined screaming. What I remember is how fast the quiet came. I stood. The lamp was still in my hand. It does not flatter me to tell you that I survived a thing that erased a town and had nothing to offer it but the keeping of a 9-year-old's oil lamp. When I could move through the town again, days later, it lay under a depth of ash you could stand on. Roofs gone. The forum where I had waited was a grey field, and the people were held inside the ash exactly where the end had found them. I will not draw that for you. I will only say that I went to the door I had refused, and I did not open it because I already knew the shape of what waited, and some doors a man should leave shut. Even a man like me. Now I owe you the truth the historians insist on, because honesty is what this candle is for. For centuries the book said August, a date copied out of that boy's letters, one scribe to the next. But the town argues back. Braziers set out for cold evenings, autumn fruit in the markets, wool on the people the ash held. The sources are not clean on the date, and I will not pretend my own memory keeps a calendar after 2,000 years. What I keep is the sound. Historians will tell you the day may never be fixed. They are right, and it changes nothing. Whatever the month, the lull was the lull, and they believed it. Here is the one thing the dead of Pompeii understood, that we who are still mortal keep forgetting. Survival is not a moment. It is not the loud part. You do not survive a thing by living through its first hour and then trusting the silence. The silence is part of it. The lull is not mercy. The lull is the disaster catching its breath. I believe they knew it, all of them, in the last unguarded instant, that the quiet had lied and that they had believed it, because believing it let them stay near everything they loved. I cannot fault them for that. I have lived 2,000 years, and in all of them, I have never once gotten to stay near anything I love, and they stayed, one family to a room, with everything they loved. Given the lie the quiet told them, staying was the choice of people who were good at being alive. And the casts, the hollow shapes that later hands filled with plaster, the ones you file past behind glass. They are not exhibits. The bodies were gone. The space they took up stayed, held in the hardened grey, down to the fold of a sleeve, the curl of a hand over a child. That is what a cast is. It is the mountain remembering, because remembering was the only thing left to do. This is Secunda's lamp. She said she would take it back at supper. I have carried it across every century since, from one dark table to the next, because she asked me to hold it, and holding it is the only supper I can give her. They are gone, Secunda and Restitutus her father, who trusted the harvest, and the neighbor who cursed her brackish cistern and never learned what it had been trying to say. Remember one of them. Secunda will do. She was 9, and her last plan was supper. They are gone, and I am still here to remember them. So now, so are you. Carry them a while. Beside this candle in the dark, a fork is waiting. A plain ship's fork, bent at the tines, dragged 200 miles across the ice by a starving man who would not leave it. It sailed north with Franklin on 2 ships England was certain could not be lost. The ice was certain otherwise. Come and hear what the cold does to certainty. The candle stays lit.